Hey there, speaking of vacations, welcome back to another review. This time of Blu-ray. This time of the Arrow Video Blu-ray of The People Under the Stairs. Now, this is a bit late in the game. This is a Blu-ray that came out in 2013. So, I mean, there's probably plenty of other videos of people doing reviews of this. But I thought, I'm doing Wes Craven's filmography, and since I already reviewed the film People Under the Stairs, I thought the best I could do is at least do a quick little Blu-ray review of the Arrow Video Blu-ray. Now, this is the original poster cover art, which I really like. Honestly some of my favorite poster cover art. I always remember liking this poster cover art, and this poster, and it was something that I'd never seen. I hadn't seen the film for years until, like, I think the first time I saw it was when I reviewed it on my channel, which is a year ago. But I knew the cover art. I knew about the cover art though, because that always stuck with me. The skull, in the sky. But just like with Scream Factory releases, there's a little. So you have this, which is a cover art I like. So I'm keeping this cover. I have this cover art flipped on my Blu-ray, but there's this cover art as well, which is the original cover art made for the film. Which I'm not really the biggest fan of that. I mean, it's got some all right artwork, but I don't know. I think it's a little bit too rough around the edges, so to speak, for me personally. But that's just me. And just excuse me for a sec, just putting the cover back in my Blu-ray. This is what the Blu-ray itself looks like. Pretty much like any other Blu-ray, Nothing spectacular, but, hey, it looks good. And just like with every Arrow video release, you not only have, of course, the Blu-ray, the Blu-ray case and everything, the cover art, and the spine. You also have, they're very sturdy. I love how Arrow's Blu-rays are sturdy, and I kind of like their clear cases because it's something different. A lot of the time, you don't really have a lot of clear cases. You just blue, just a Blu-ray, so just generic blue case. But almost every Arrow video release, I think almost every Arrow video release I can think of, the ones that I have, come with booklets, and this one is no exception. And this is something where definitely this Blu-ray has a leg up over the Scream Factory release, because the Scream Factory release doesn't have something like this. And this booklet has, of course, as you can see, you get the cover art, which is of the movie poster without the titles. Picture of Everett McGill in his gimp outfit, and you got runs down to the cast and crew there, the credits for the Blu-ray, and contents. They have a little interview. Basically what it is a short little essay by Brian J. Robb on People Under the Stairs, and it was a pretty good read too. And you also got pictures from the cast from the film. So it's some cool stuff. I mean, Arrow Video really does a great job with this kind of stuff for their Blu-rays. Something they really outdo themselves for. If I had to pick between the two, I'd have to say Arrow, since I have a region-free player, and I have no limitations when it comes to getting Arrow Blu-rays. I'd have to say Arrow Video is my favorite horror Blu-ray, basically my favorite Blu-ray releasing company. And they release DVDs as well, so I'd say it's probably my favorite distribution company at the moment. So that's the booklet. And I'll get into the actual review of the Blu-ray, of what's actually on the Blu-ray. Of course, you have the film. The film itself. It's a high-definition digital transfer of the film by Universal. Original uncompressed stereo, 2.0 audio, optional English, subtitles and stuff like that. But it has the original uncompressed stereo audio. It's the best I've ever seen the film look and sound. It looks great. It sounds great. It's definitely a good transfer as usual. I mean, Arrow Video, they usually don't disappoint anyway. It also has a commentary track on it with Brandon Quinton Adams, moderated by Callum Waddle. I didn't really I tried to get into it, but I couldn't get into it. I guess it just, well, I didn't find it that interesting. I'm not a big commentary guy anyway, so I'm not really the best guy to ask about. Even if I did listen to a commentary track, I wouldn't be the best guy to say, hey, yeah, is it good? You know, you know, there are only a few handfuls that I like. I like the one with from Tank Girl, but and the one on the Creepshow Blu-ray, but and on the Creepshow DVD, not the Blu-ray, but it's also on the Blu-ray. But the UK Blu-ray by Second Sight, not the Blu-ray in the US for some stupid reason. But anyway, this was still better. I mean, than because when I got this, this was a little bit after 2013, and this was at the time period when People Under the Stairs. This Arrow video release was the only release you can get that of the film that had features on it, and so at the time when I got this, it was a really good purchase, and it still is because there are still features on this that aren't available in the Scream Factory release, which is bullshit. I mean, that makes it so I have to get both, I have to get 2 copies of the same movie just to get all the features, which is bullshit because of this stupid region locking crap. But yeah, it sucks for not only me but for everyone. Sucks for people who have the Scream Factory release, but they can't see certain features on this unless they have a region-free player. If they do, they're cool, and they live in the UK, alright. But even if they live in the UK, they have to have a region-free player in order to play the Scream Factory release. It's just a never-ending cycle of bullshit. But anyway, the commentary with Brandon Quintin Adams, I just couldn't get into it, and honestly, I would have rather have had a video interview with Brandon instead of a commentary track. That's one thing about the Scream Factory release I wish this had, the commentary with Wes Craven. As I'd probably get more interested in that than the commentary of Brandon Quintin Adams, because I'm like, why is he doing the commentary track? I mean, most of the time when you hear a commentary track, you maybe get a star, but you also have the director or somebody else that do the commentary track, and I don't know, I guess I just would have preferred a video interview with Brandon. The first interview on this is the longest one. It's an interview with Wes Craven it's about 25 minutes. It's called Fear, Food, and Class Warfare. Director Wes Craven discusses People Under the Stairs. And it wasn't much, really, in terms of information about the behind the scenes of the film, which is kind of disappointing. I mean, there's a lot of him talking about his past when he was growing up, how his father sort of inspired the character Everett McGill played in the movie, because he was kind of a hard ass, and how he was, you know, sheltered as a kid, was never able to really do anything that related to horror and stuff like that, and stuff you've heard in other interviews and other featurettes and documentaries that talked, you know, with Wes. And he talks about how he came up with the idea for the film from an article he saw in the paper, and he talks about how he was working on the screenplay, but there was something missing, and it was through his dreams that he was able to finally get the final form of People Under the Stairs down. And it was kind of interesting sort of to hear him talk about how he was taught from these people that he knew. There was a friend of his taught him how to pretty much control his dreams, and he had a dream that was very cinematic of quality, that was a lot that ended up becoming pretty much the template for People Under the Stairs. And he dreamt it, and then he had to go do something, then he came back, then he dreamt it again, then he woke up, and then he wrote the spec screenplay, and then he was off to the races. So that was kind of interesting. He talked about how it was hard to work with Brandon Quintin Adams, not because he was a bad actor. He said he was a real natural. It's because of the fact that, you know, he had the child labor laws on the set, so he wasn't able to work with him as much and with as many shots as he probably would have wanted to. So he joked about it. He was like, you know, I kept trying to just find any way I could to distract the child labor people so I could get in one more shot with Brandon. He talks about how the film, the sequences, you know, that were shot inside the house were shot in one set. It wasn't the actual interior of the house that we see in the film. The exterior of the house we see in the film is just the exterior. The interior of the house was shot on a soundstage. And he talks about how they used the same set for every shot in the film. So that was pretty interesting. So First he shot the sequences and on the set where the set was all clean and prim and proper, and then he shot the sequences where it was supposed to look dilapidated and stuff like that, and then shot the sequences, of course, that were from the inside of the house, behind the walls and things like that. So yeah, so that was pretty interesting. That was kind of some interesting stuff. Um, but then he talks about the themes of the film, which I really am not the biggest fan of that kind of stuff. He talks about how I talk about the themes of the film that dealt with racism and classism, and talks about, a little bit about Sigmund Freud, and it talks about psychology, and pretty much what he does is this was kind of a mini lecture on people under the stairs. I mean, he was a humanities teacher at one point in his life, so that's what it feels like. He's a very intelligent man, and that's another aspect of him that I think it is not overlooked, but at the same time, I mean, a lot of people look at him just a horror director, and maybe horror directors aren't that intellectual, but Wes Craven was a total amazingly brilliant man, and that's another, like I said, this the way that he passed. I mean, that his brain is the one thing that he is his brain. I mean, it's just, I can't even believe it, really. It's just, I'm still in shock of the fact that that's how he died, brain cancer, because of when you see him speak, it's so much, just him passing away is tragic enough as it is, but to see that it was because of brain cancer, the to see that brain, that amazing intellect, get destroyed, that's just terrible. But anyway, it was nice to hear from Wes, but I would have liked to hear a little bit more about the behind the scenes of the film. That's just me personally. Then the next featurette, the next little interview is with A.J. Langer. It's called Behind Closed Doors, and this was an all right one. It was pretty short, but it was nice to hear from A.J. She talks about how she was a big fan of Wes Craven. That's one of the really big reasons why she wanted to do the film. She also talked about how she's not really the biggest fan of horror films, but she mentions a memory that she has when she was younger, when she saw Poltergeist, and it scared the crap out of her, which I like. I had fun with her mentioning Poltergeist, because Poltergeist is one of my favorites. So I was like, aha, oh, it's funny, So it was nice to hear AJ talk about Poltergeist for a little bit. She talks about how she got a friendship. Excuse me if I'm, sniffling a bit. My allergies are acting up. I took an allergy pill, but it's helped, but it's still, running a little bit. But anyway, AJ, though, she talks about how she became friends with a good amount of the cast, especially Wendy Roby and Sean Whalen. She didn't really become good friends with Brandon because he was a kid, and he wasn't able to be on set as much as AJ was, and Sean was, and Wendy was. So she talked about how much it was a really good time to work with Wes Craven. She loved how he enabled her to do whatever she needed to do. He trusted her in her acting and her performances. She was 17 when she did this. She was playing Alice. It was a character that was underaged, but she was 17, so she was still technically underage, but her character in the film was supposed to be a lot younger than 17. And I thought AJ did a great job. And she talks about how her first scene that she shot for the film was the scene in the bathtub scene, and how she, of course, the interview, asked her about, was the water hot? It's like, yeah, it was hot. It was really warm. It was really warm. But she was like, she liked doing that scene because she liked going all in right from the bat, because she's the type of actress who wants to do it. She doesn't want to just, have a stunt person do whatever, or maybe it, make it so the water's not hot. No, she wants to get in the hot water and do it, and she liked the fact that Wes trusted her to be able to do stuff like that. She talks about how much fun it was to go around in the sets, And she also talked about how dangerous it was because there was booby traps and stuff like that, so you didn't really know what might happen. She also talks about how she saw the film again when she was a bit older with her husband, and it freaked her out, and she forgot how kind of freaky and scary it was, and yeah, so that's really, I mean, it was a pretty short interview. I think it was what, it was like 18 minutes or less than that, or 11 or 15 or something. It was a really short interview, and she had a few things to say here and there, but and she mentioned the scene with the blood, where she slips and falls, in the blood. She talked about how, disgusting that was, but, she liked doing it because it enabled her to really go all out as an actress. And so it was nice to hear from AJ. So, yeah, that's something that I don't know why that wasn't, I guess it must have been rights issues with whoever, did the featurettes on this or the interviews, but yeah, that's disappointing because that's not on the Scream Factory release. The interview with AJ, and then you had Silent but Deadly, Sean Whalen, an interview with Sean Whalen, which is my favorite little featurette, little interview on the Blu-ray. Sean talks about how, his audition was pretty awkward. He's a 27-year-old actor at the time, which is interesting too. He was 27. A lot of people look at him in the film and think, how was it, being a kid actor? And he's like, I was 27 when I played Roach. I wasn't a kid. And then he talks about how he mentions the audition process and how friends of his were like complaining about, man, you got it so easy, I got to get up in the morning, I got to put on a suit, and I got to go to my job, in the corporation or in the business, office. And Sean Whalen's like, I don't think you understand, I spent the whole audition in Wes's office screaming and laughing in a corner of a room dressed in tattered clothes. I mean, my job isn't easy either. My, so I like that. Sean Whalen had a good sense of humor, and it was a lot of fun to hear him talk about the film. He talks about the audition process and how he didn't think he was going to get the role, and then he was driving home, and then he got a call, and they said you got the role, and it was his first big role, and he was really excited for it. He talks about the scene where he's in the bathroom, and he gets shot at by Everett McGill. And he talks about how when that scene was first shot, the gunshot goes off, and he yells the word shit. So it shoots him, and he's like shit, and then Wes Craven pulls him aside after the shot is over. He's like, Sean, you can't talk. You're not supposed to talk. I mean, you can't say shit anyway, but you're not supposed to talk. You can't talk. Your character can't talk. And so Sean decided from that point on that he was going to wear the prosthetic tongue, the one that had, the tip of it cut off for that scene where he goes like, this to show that that his tongue has been cut off. And he wore that prosthetic tongue throughout the entire film for every scene he was in. So that enabled him to just be natural and do whatever you wanted and say whatever you wanted. And he couldn't say anything anyway because the prosthetic tongue really made it impossible for him to speak. So that's what helped him with the acting performance, and I just thought it was kind of a fun little story. Then he talked about how it was so difficult. It took like an hour and a half just to put on the fingers, the fingernails, and to put on the dirt on them, and he was talking about how the fingernails, because they're so long, it was really in the fingers, because they were actual extra added attachments to his fingers. They didn't just give him long fingernails and call it a day. It's something that it was something else. And he talked about how it was difficult to eat, and he mentioned like you definitely do not pick your nose, because the really sharp fingernails. And then he talked about a fun scene where the scene where the dog was chasing after him in the basement. He talks about how the dog almost bit his leg off. Like, it was really close call, and he just barely got into the furnace hiding place just in time before the dog just started just tearing at his leg. And then the really fun story, the one that really got me cracked up, that really, made me laugh, was when he was talking about when he went to see the premiere of the film, and he invited his college friends and all his friends and things like that. And when the scene first, early in the film, when you hear him moaning through the walls, his friends were like busting out laughing. They were like laughing their asses off. And then every time he would moan like that, they would keep laughing. And then after the movie was over, Sean, takes his friends aside and just like, what was so funny about that? Why were you laughing? And they were like, well, you know, that it's because that's what you sound like when you're hungover after one of the college parties. And, because you're like in the bed and you're like, "Ah!" So and Sean cracks up and he's like, he agrees. He's like, yeah, I forgot. I guess I forgot about that, but I thought that was funny. And he talks about how he really appreciates the fan base that he has, and talks about how a lot of people remember the character because he has a heroic sacrifice, and because he's also represents a rebel, and things like that. And people like the rebel who rebels against you know, the evil of the film, and so forth and so on. And he's surprised by how he said he's surprised, and then at the same time not as surprised by the lasting legacy of Roach. But he definitely says he really does appreciate the role, and had a lot of fun with it. And it was really nice to hear from Sean. That's something that was definitely sorely missing from the Scream Factory release, and it's really too bad that's not on there. And I don't have a Scream Factory release. I'm just going off of what I know the features are. And then you had a really useless interview with Jeffrey Reddick, the creator of Final Destination series, who talks about the impact of the film. It's pretty much the same stuff. He talks about the same themes of classism and racism and all this kind of stuff, and tries to compare it to the time frame that the interview was recorded. And it's just the kind of stuff I just don't like. That I really am not a big fan of that stuff. It's like I have this Hellraiser book called The Hellraiser Films and Their Legacy, and it's a really hard to find, but it's a hard to find book, but it's a great book for Hellraiser fans. Um, but it has really good stuff about the making of the films and talking about the movies themselves. But then it has like the stuff that talks about the philosophy and the psychology or whatever. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. I don't give a shit about the philosophy of Hellraiser, and I didn't really give a shit about this philosophy of People on the Stairs. I really wish that interview with Jeffrey Raddick was replaced with an interview with Brandon Quinton Adams, because I really would have liked that a lot more. Because this documentary, this little featurette, little interview was just, I didn't think it was that interesting. It's nice to hear that the guy's a fan of the film, but it just isn't, I'm not a fan of hearing that kind of stuff about the subtext and the layers, and that's not what I call entertainment, so to speak. So I felt it was kind of useless. It was kind of a waste of space. It was something that should have been an essay in the booklet that was included on Blu-ray, not in a video interview. But yeah, that's the People Under the Stairs Blu-ray. It's good. I mean, there are better Arrow Video Blu-rays out there that have more features, that have a little bit that are a little bit more in depth. That's something that I kind of felt was lacking. It didn't feel like there was a lot there in terms of really in depth on behind the scenes of the making of the movie. There's a few snippets here and there from the actors and some people, Wes, but there wasn't really a lot of it. And maybe there isn't that much, or I don't know, but I felt there could have been a little bit more. But either way, it was really nice to hear from A.J. Langer. It was really nice to hear from Sean Whalen. It's nice to hear from Wes. But I do have a feeling I probably like the commentary he did for the Scream Factory release a lot more than his interview here, because it's pretty short, and there's probably more he could have said, but it was only 20-something minutes. But the film itself looks great, sounds great, and the booklet had some of the most interesting sort of bits of behind the scenes stuff, which I thought was like, why wasn't there more of that kind of stuff in the movie? But on the featurettes, or featurette, because there wasn't even a featurette on here. See, when you think about like features, you think about featurettes, and there's no featurettes here. On this, there's no making of documentary. It's just interviews with some cast members and the director and a guy who wrote Final Destination, who's a fan of the movie. So it's kind of, a little bit disappointing in that regard, but, you know, thankfully we have a Scream Factory release, which has a little bit more of that stuff, but at the same time, it doesn't have the interviews with A.J. Langer and Sean Whalen. So, you know, it's one of those where, I mean, it sucks either way. But I wouldn't say it's as bad as or as disappointing as something like Leviathan Blu-ray, because that Blu-ray was just insulting, like, because after most of the longest featurette was talking about the special effects, and majority of people involved with the film were just shitting on the movie. So that really didn't help, and there was none of that in this. So I'm glad that was the case, but I can't help but feel a little bit let down by just there's no making of, there's no nothing, there's no actual featurette. It's just interviews. But you know, hey, it was still really nice to see those interviews regardless. And I'm definitely still glad to have this Blu-ray. And I do recommend it if you're a fan of the film and you have a region-free player, or you live in the UK and you don't have this in your collection yet. I definitely do recommend adding it to your collection. If you don't have if you don't have a region-free player and you don't live in the UK, then it's really not worth buying it, because you won't be able to watch it anyway. So it'd just be a very expensive paperweight. But if you do have the, you know, those benefits that I just mentioned, the ability to play the Blu-ray, and please do, please give it a you know, pick it up sometime. It's probably going to be a lot cheaper now because of the Scream Factory release. So, but at the same time, maybe not, because it also has features the Scream Factory release doesn't have, and you know, I just hate talking about the, you know, region locking and shit like that. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, I do have a problem with it. I'm just saying that I personally, I don't have to deal with it because of my region-free player, but I do have a serious problem with it because I just think it's bullshit. It's bullshit for people who live in the UK and for people who live in the US. It sucks all the way around. But this is a pretty good Blu-ray. Not great, not spectacular. But it was a good one, and I'm definitely glad to have it. But anyway, thank you for watching my Blu-ray review of the Arrow Video release of The People Under the Stairs, and I will see you guys later. See ya.